Welcome to Toxic from Reddit, where real toxic relationship stories come to life. Here you'll hear true stories from people who experience toxic relationships from different perspectives. Partners dealing with cheating, manipulation, gaslighting, red flags, and all the emotional chaos that comes with loving someone who hurts you. Stories of betrayal, of finding strength to leave, of discovering the truth, of heartbreak, of healing, and the raw reality of toxic love. This is a real story, shared anonymously on Reddit. Some details have been changed to protect the identity of the people involved. Hi everyone, my name is Emma. I'm 29 years old and I live in Boston, Massachusetts. And I need to tell you about the most confusing and devastating situation that has completely turned my life upside down, which is that my best friend of 15 years confessed that he's been in love with me since we were teenagers. And he told me this the night before my wedding, the night before I was supposed to marry my fiancé of 4 years. And now I don't know what to do, because his confession has made me question everything. It's made me realize that maybe I have feelings for him too, feelings that I've been suppressing for years, and now my wedding is postponed, my fiancé is heartbroken and furious, my family is confused and disappointed, and I feel like I've destroyed everything. But I also can't stop thinking about my best friend and wondering if we're supposed to be together. I'm gonna tell you this entire story from the beginning, because it's so complicated, and there's so much history that you need to understand. My best friend's name is Jake. He's 30 years old, and we met when we were in 8th grade, so we were about 13 and 14 years old. Jake's family moved to Boston from Chicago, and he started at my school in the middle of the year, and he was the new kid who didn't know anyone. I remember the first day Jake came to our school. He sat next to me in English class, and the teacher asked him to introduce himself, and Jake was clearly nervous and uncomfortable being the center of attention. After class, I went up to him and introduced myself, and I offered to show him around the school, and that's how our friendship started. Jake and I became friends really quickly, like we just clicked. We had the same sense of humor, we liked the same music and movies, and we could talk for hours about everything and nothing. Jake became part of my friend group, and we all hung out together, but Jake and I had a special connection, like we understood each other in a way that was different from our other friendships. Throughout high school, Jake and I were inseparable. Like we sat together at lunch, we were partners on school projects, we went to school dances together as friends, and we talked on the phone every night. People at school always assumed that Jake and I were dating, and we would laugh it off and say that we were just friends, that we were like brother and sister. But looking back now, I can see that maybe there was always something more there. Like there were moments when Jake would look at me in a certain way, or when we would be sitting close together and I would feel this electricity between us. But I always pushed those feelings aside because I valued our friendship so much, and I didn't want to ruin it by making things romantic. Jake dated other girls in high school, and I dated other guys, and we would talk to each other about our relationships, we would give each other advice, and we would comfort each other when we went through breakups. I remember feeling jealous sometimes when Jake would talk about girls he liked, but I told myself that I was just being protective of my friend, that I just wanted to make sure he was with someone who was good enough for him. After high school, Jake and I went to different colleges. He went to a school in New York, and I stayed in Boston, but we stayed in touch. Like we would text every day, we would video chat every week, and we would visit each other whenever we could. Being apart from Jake was hard, like I missed him constantly, and I would count down the days until we could see each other again. During college, I had a few relationships, nothing too serious, and Jake had relationships too, and we would still talk to each other about everything. There was one time during my sophomore year when I went through a really bad breakup, and I was devastated, and Jake drove 4 hours from New York to Boston to comfort me, and he stayed with me for the whole weekend, and we just talked and watched movies, and he made me feel better. I remember that weekend so clearly, because there was a moment when we were sitting on my couch watching a movie, and Jake put his arm around me, and I leaned into him, and it felt so natural and so right, and I remember thinking that I wished I could feel this comfortable and this safe with the guys I was dating, but I pushed that thought away because Jake was my best friend, and I didn't want to complicate our friendship. After college, Jake moved back to Boston, and I was so happy to have him back. Like it felt like a piece of me that had been missing was finally back in place. Jake got a job as a graphic designer, and I was working as a teacher, and we fell back into our old routine of hanging out all the time, going to dinner, going to movies, just spending time together. About 5 years ago, I met my fiancé, whose name is David, at a friend's party. David is 32 years old. He's a lawyer, and he's smart and successful and handsome. And when we started dating, I thought he was everything I was looking for in a partner. David was romantic and attentive. He would plan elaborate dates. He would bring me flowers. and he seemed really committed to building a relationship with me. When I introduced David to Jake, I was nervous because Jake's opinion mattered so much to me, and I wanted them to get along. Jake was polite to David, but I could tell that he wasn't as enthusiastic about David as I had hoped he would be. When I asked Jake what he thought of David, Jake said that David seemed nice, but there was something in Jake's tone that made me think he wasn't being completely honest. As my relationship with David progressed, I noticed that Jake started to pull away a little bit. Like he wasn't texting me as much, he wasn't as available to hang out, and when we did hang out, he seemed distracted or distant. I asked Jake if everything was okay, if I had done something to upset him, and Jake said that everything was fine, that he was just busy with work. But I knew Jake well enough to know that something was wrong, and it hurt me that he wasn't being honest with me about what was bothering him. I tried to make more of an effort to spend time with Jake to maintain our friendship, but it felt like the more serious my relationship with David became, the more Jake pulled away. About a year into my relationship with David, David told me that he thought I spent too much time with Jake, that he felt like Jake was too involved in my life, and that it made him uncomfortable. I was surprised and a little defensive. I said that Jake was my best friend, that we had been friends for over a decade, and that my friendship with Jake had nothing to do with my relationship with David. David said that he understood that Jake was my friend, but that he felt like I prioritized Jake over him sometimes, and that he needed me to set some boundaries. I didn't want to lose David, and I didn't want to cause problems in our relationship. So I agreed to spend less time with Jake, and I started declining some of Jake's invitations to hang out. This was really hard for me because Jake had always been such an important part of my life, and it felt wrong to push him away. I could tell that Jake was hurt by the change in our friendship. Like he would ask me to hang out, and I would say I was busy with David, and I could hear the disappointment in his voice. But I told myself that this was what I needed to do to make my relationship with David work, that it was normal to spend less time with friends when you're in a serious relationship. About 3 years ago, David proposed to me, and I said yes. I was happy and excited, and I thought that David was the person I was supposed to spend my life with. When I told Jake about the engagement, he congratulated me, but I could tell that he wasn't genuinely happy for me. Like there was something sad in his eyes, but he hugged me and said that he hoped I would be happy. David and I started planning the wedding, and it was a long engagement because we wanted to save money and plan everything perfectly. During the engagement, my relationship with Jake continued to be strained, like we would see each other occasionally, but it wasn't the same as it used to be, and I missed him. I missed our friendship, but I didn't know how to fix it without causing problems with David. David made it clear that he didn't want Jake to be too involved in the wedding, like when I suggested that Jake could be one of the groomsmen. David said that he wanted his own friends to be his groomsmen, and that Jake could just be a guest. I was disappointed, but I didn't push it because I didn't want to fight with David about Jake again. As the wedding got closer, I started feeling anxious and uncertain, like I would have moments where I would question whether I was making the right decision, whether David was really the person I wanted to spend my life with. I told myself that it was just cold feet, that it was normal to feel nervous before getting married, and that I just needed to push through these feelings. The week before the wedding was incredibly stressful. Like there were so many last-minute details to take care of. Family was arriving from out of town, and I was feeling overwhelmed. Jake had been distant during the wedding planning, like he hadn't been very involved or supportive, and I was hurt by that. But I tried not to think about it too much. The night before the wedding, we had the rehearsal dinner, and it was a nice event with our families and close friends. Jake was there, and he was quiet and seemed uncomfortable, and I wanted to talk to him, to ask him what was wrong, but I was so busy with wedding stuff that I didn't get a chance. After the rehearsal dinner, I went back to my apartment, because David and I had decided to spend the night before the wedding apart, following the tradition of not seeing each other before the ceremony. I was exhausted and stressed, and I was trying to relax and get some sleep before the big day. Around 10 p.m., there was a knock on my door, and when I opened it, Jake was standing there, and he looked terrible, like he had been crying. And he said, "Emma, I need to talk to you. It's important." I let him in, and I was worried. I said, "Jake, what's wrong? Are you okay?" And Jake said, "No, I'm not okay. I need to tell you something, and I should have told you a long time ago, but I was scared, and now I'm running out of time." I sat down on the couch, and Jake sat next to me, and he took my hands, and he said, "Emma, I'm in love with you. I've been in love with you since we were 16 years old, and I've been too scared to tell you because I didn't want to ruin our friendship. But I can't let you marry David without telling you how I feel, because I think you're making a mistake. I think we're supposed to be together." I was completely shocked, like I couldn't process what Jake was saying, and I just sat there staring at him. And Jake continued, he said, "I know this is terrible timing. I know I should have told you years ago, but I was scared of losing you. And then you met David, and I thought I had lost my chance, and I tried to move on. I tried to be happy for you, but I can't do it. I can't watch you marry someone else when I know that we're meant to be together. I didn't know what to say. Like my mind was racing, and I felt like my whole world was spinning. Part of me was angry at Jake for telling me this the night before my wedding, for putting me in this impossible position. But another part of me felt this rush of emotion, like something inside me was waking up, something that I had been suppressing for years. I said, Jake, why are you telling me this now? Why didn't you tell me before? And Jake said, because I was scared, because I didn't want to lose you, because I thought that being your friend was better than not having you in my life at all. But I can't do it anymore. I can't pretend that I don't love you. I can't watch you marry David and spend the rest of my life wondering what if. I started crying, and I said, Jake, I don't know what to say. I'm getting married tomorrow. I've planned this whole wedding. My family is here. David's family is here, and you're telling me this now. Jake said, I know the timing is terrible, and I'm sorry, but I had to tell you, because if I didn't, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I asked Jake to leave. I said, I need time to think. I need to process this. And Jake said, okay, but Emma, please think about what I said. Please think about whether you're really in love with David, or whether you're just going through with this wedding because it's what you're supposed to do. After Jake left, I sat on my couch in complete shock, like I couldn't believe what had just happened. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about what Jake had said, thinking about our friendship, thinking about all the moments over the years when I had felt something more than friendship for Jake but had pushed those feelings away. I started thinking about my relationship with David, and I realized that I had never felt with David the way I felt with Jake. Like, with David, the relationship was comfortable and stable, but it wasn't passionate, it wasn't exciting, and there wasn't that deep connection that I had with Jake. I started questioning whether I was really in love with David, or whether I was just with him because he was a good partner on paper, because he checked all the boxes of what I thought I should want. I thought about the fact that I had been willing to distance myself from Jake for David, and I wondered if that was a sign that something was wrong, because if I was really in love with David, wouldn't I want him to embrace my friendship with Jake, rather than feel threatened by it? I thought about how much I had missed Jake over the past few years, how much it had hurt to have distance between us, and I realized that maybe those feelings meant something more than just friendship. By the time the sun came up, I hadn't slept at all, and I was more confused than ever. I knew that I needed to make a decision, that I couldn't just go through with the wedding while having all these doubts and questions. I called my sister, whose name is Olivia, and I asked her to come over. And when she arrived, I told her everything. I told her about Jake's confession, about my feelings, about my doubts about David. Olivia was shocked, and she said, Emma, what are you going to do? The wedding is in 6 hours. And I said, I don't know. I don't know if I can go through with it. I don't know if I'm making the right decision. Olivia said that I needed to talk to David, that I needed to be honest with him about what was happening, and that I couldn't just leave him at the altar without an explanation. So I called David, and I asked him to come over. And when he arrived, he could tell immediately that something was wrong. I told David about Jake's confession and about my doubts, and David was furious. He said, I can't believe this. I can't believe that Jake would do this the night before our wedding, and I can't believe that you're actually considering what he said. I tried to explain to David that this wasn't just about Jake's confession, that I had been having doubts about our relationship, that I wasn't sure if I was really in love with him, and David said, so you're telling me that you don't love me the day of our wedding, after 4 years together, after all the planning and all the money we've spent. I said, David, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but I can't marry you if I'm not sure. I can't make this commitment if I have doubts. And David said, this is unbelievable. This is absolutely unbelievable. You're throwing away our relationship because your best friend suddenly decided he has feelings for you. David said that he thought I had always had feelings for Jake, that he had always felt like he was competing with Jake for my attention and my affection, and that he should have known that this would happen. I tried to apologize, I tried to explain, but David was too angry to listen, and he said that the wedding was off, that he was going to tell everyone that I had called it off, and that he never wanted to see me again. David left, and I just sat there feeling like my life was falling apart, like I had just destroyed everything. My family started arriving at my apartment, confused about what was happening, and I had to explain to them that the wedding was off, that I had called it off, and they were shocked and disappointed and angry. My mom said, Emma, what have you done? You had a good man who loved you, you had a beautiful wedding planned, and you threw it all away for what? For Jake, for your best friend who suddenly decided he has feelings for you. I tried to explain that it wasn't that simple, that I had been having doubts about David, that I needed to figure out my feelings. But my mom said that I was making a huge mistake, that I was going to regret this. My dad was more understanding. He said that if I wasn't sure about marrying David, then I did the right thing by calling off the wedding, that it would have been worse to go through with it and then get divorced later. But I could tell that my dad was disappointed too, that he had been looking forward to the wedding and that he was worried about me. The next few days were a nightmare. Like, we had to contact all the guests and tell them that the wedding was canceled. We had to deal with vendors and try to get refunds, and I had to deal with the emotional fallout of what I had done. David's family was furious with me. They sent me angry messages saying that I had humiliated David, that I had wasted everyone's time and money, and that I was selfish and cruel. My friends were divided in their reactions. Some of them were supportive and said that I did the right thing by being honest about my feelings, but others were critical and said that I had handled the situation terribly, that I should have figured out my feelings before the night before the wedding. And then there was Jake, who I hadn't spoken to since the night he confessed his feelings. I didn't know what to say to him. I didn't know how I felt about him, and I needed time to process everything. Jake sent me a text saying that he was sorry for the timing of his confession, that he never meant to hurt me or to cause problems, and that he hoped I was okay. I didn't respond to Jake's text because I didn't know what to say, and I needed space to figure out my feelings. I spent the next few weeks in a fog, like I was going through the motions of my life, but I wasn't really present. I was just trying to survive each day. I took some time off work, and I spent a lot of time alone, thinking about my life, about my relationships, about what I wanted for my future. I thought about David, and I felt terrible about how I had hurt him, but I also knew that I had made the right decision by not marrying him, because I wasn't in love with him the way I should have been. And I thought about Jake, and I tried to figure out how I felt about him, whether I was in love with him, or whether I was just confused and emotional because of his confession. I thought about our friendship, about all the years we had spent together, about all the moments when I had felt something more than friendship, but had pushed those feelings away. I realized that I had been in love with Jake for a long time, maybe since we were teenagers, but I had been too scared to admit it, too scared to risk our friendship, too scared to be vulnerable. And I realized that part of the reason I had dated David was because he was safe, because being with David didn't require me to be vulnerable the way being with Jake would. After about a month of not speaking to Jake, I finally reached out to him, and I asked if we could meet and talk. We met at a coffee shop, and it was awkward at first, like we didn't know how to act around each other. But then we started talking, really talking, and it felt like old times. I told Jake that I had called off the wedding, and Jake said that he knew, that he had heard from mutual friends, and that he felt terrible about it, that he never meant to cause so much chaos in my life. I said, Jake, I need to be honest with you. I've been thinking about what you said, and I think I have feelings for you too. I think I've had feelings for you for a long time, but I was too scared to admit it. Jake looked at me with this expression of hope and disbelief, and he said, Emma, are you serious? Do you really have feelings for me? And I said, yes, I do, but I'm also scared because if we try to be together and it doesn't work out, I'll lose my best friend, and I don't know if I can handle that. Jake said that he understood, that he was scared too, but that he thought we owed it to ourselves to try, that we had been dancing around our feelings for each other for 15 years, and that it was time to be honest and see if we could be together. I agreed, and Jake and I decided to start dating, to see if we could transition from being best friends to being romantic partners. Dating Jake has been amazing and terrifying at the same time. Like, on one hand, it feels so natural and so right, like we already know each other so well, we're so comfortable with each other, and there's this deep connection that I've never had with anyone else. But on the other hand, I'm constantly worried that something will go wrong, that we'll realize that we're better as friends than as romantic partners, and that I'll lose Jake forever. We've been dating for about 2 months now, and so far it's been really good. Like, the physical chemistry is there, the emotional connection is there, and I feel happier than I've felt in a long time. But I'm also dealing with a lot of guilt and regret about how everything happened, about how I hurt David, about how I disappointed my family, about how I caused so much chaos and drama. My family has been slowly coming around to the idea of Jake and me being together. Like, my sister Olivia has been supportive. She says that she always thought Jake and I would end up together, and that she's happy that I'm finally being honest about my feelings. My mom is still disappointed about the canceled wedding, but she's starting to accept that I made the right decision for myself. My dad has been great. He's met with Jake and me a few times, and he's told me that he can see how happy I am with Jake, and that's all he wants for me. But there are still some family members who are critical of me, who think I handled everything terribly, and who think I should have figured out my feelings before getting engaged to David. David has not spoken to me since the day I called off the wedding, and I don't blame him. Like, I hurt him deeply, and he has every right to be angry with me. I've heard through mutual friends that David is doing okay, that he's focusing on his career and spending time with his family, and I hope that he's able to move on and find someone who loves him the way he deserves to be loved. I've been going to therapy to help me process everything that's happened, and my therapist has been helpful in helping me understand my feelings and my patterns in relationships. My therapist has pointed out that I have a tendency to avoid vulnerability, to choose safe relationships over passionate ones, and that my relationship with Jake is forcing me to be vulnerable in a way that I've never been before. My therapist has also helped me work through the guilt I feel about hurting David, and has reminded me that while the timing and the way I handled things wasn't ideal, I did the right thing by being honest about my feelings and not going through with a marriage that I wasn't sure about. Jake and I have talked a lot about our relationship, about our fears, about what we want for the future, and we've agreed to take things slow, to not rush into anything, and to be honest with each other about how we're feeling. Jake has been incredibly patient and understanding, and he's told me that he's willing to wait as long as it takes for me to feel secure in our relationship. I've been thinking about the future, about what my life with Jake might look like. And I'm excited but also scared because this relationship means so much to me, and I don't want to mess it up. I'm scared that the pressure of transitioning from best friends to romantic partners will be too much, that we'll realize that we were better off as friends, but I'm also hopeful that we can make this work, that we can build a life together. I've been thinking about marriage and about whether Jake and I will eventually get married, and right now I'm not ready to think about that. Like, I just called off a wedding 2 months ago, and I need time to heal and to figure out my relationship with Jake before I can even think about marriage again. I've been thinking about what I would say to people who are in similar situations, who have feelings for their best friend but are scared to act on them, and I think I would say that life is too short to not be honest about your feelings, that you owe it to yourself to take the risk, even if it's scary, even if you might lose the friendship, because the regret of not trying is worse than the pain of trying and failing. I would also say that if you're in a relationship and you have doubts, you need to address those doubts before you get engaged or married, because it's not fair to your partner to go through with a commitment that you're not sure about, and it's not fair to yourself to settle for a relationship that doesn't make you truly happy. I've been thinking about Jake, and about how brave he was to confess his feelings to me, even though the timing was terrible, even though he risked losing me forever, and I'm grateful that he did, because his confession forced me to be honest with myself about my feelings, about what I really wanted, and it gave me the courage to make a difficult decision that I needed to make. I've been thinking about David, and I hope that someday he'll be able to forgive me, not for his sake, but for mine, because I carry a lot of guilt about how I hurt him, and I would like to be able to make peace with what happened. But I also know that David might never forgive me, and I have to accept that and move forward. I've been thinking about my life and about how much it's changed in the past few months, and it's been overwhelming and chaotic and painful, but it's also been liberating, because I'm finally being honest about who I am and what I want, and I'm finally taking risks and being vulnerable, and that feels scary but also empowering. Jake and I are taking things one day at a time. We're enjoying being together. We're building our relationship, and we're trying not to worry too much about the future. We're learning how to be romantic partners while still maintaining the friendship that has always been the foundation of our relationship. And it's a delicate balance, but so far we're managing. I don't know what the future holds for Jake and me. I don't know if we'll get married someday. I don't know if this relationship will last forever. But I know that right now, in this moment, I'm happy. I'm with someone who loves me and who I love, and that's enough. Thank you for reading my story, and if you've been through something similar, if you've had feelings for your best friend, if you've called off a wedding, if you've had to make a difficult choice between two people, or if you've had to be honest about your feelings even when the timing was terrible, I would love to hear how you dealt with it and where you are now. I'm still figuring things out, still navigating this new relationship with Jake, still dealing with the aftermath of the canceled wedding, but I'm hopeful about the future, and I'm grateful that I finally had the courage to be honest about my feelings.